Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to
Yeah,
meet you. There's so much that's going on in your life, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. And
thank
before
you.
we get there, I want to know 4 years ago, this pandemic was really sinking in, and no one really knew how long it was going to last and how everything was going to shake out. I still don't think we do know. But ultimately, how did you survive that time period, and how did it change the way that you do things?
I do like that you asked this question. I've heard you ask it before, and I think
Yeah.
it's a really, I think things things came back to normal. We thought so quickly that sometimes we've forgotten that stop, that universal time of stopping and also losing people happened. And for me, I feel I'm still um coming to, it's still emerging, all the stuff that emerged in that time. For me, luckily, like I wasn't, most of the people I knew were okay, and so I got to experience the pandemic as a time of stillness, as a time of things stopping, and giving myself the time to actually to live in a certain moment, like how I would really like to live, which is much slower. I'd been studying Indian dance called Bharatanatyam and also flamenco, which is another dance. And I danced like in a way that like took time to dance. I meditated where I lived in New Mexico at that time in a small house with a view. It was outside of Santa Fe. So I was able to walk out of the house and go into a wild place, and I dearly loved to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I really, I feel like we live in a world where there's always a sense of doing. It's really loud. It's really hard to let yourself slow down and just listen and create. The impulse to act fast on any insight you have is so strong. I feel that what I did in during that time, as much as I was doing, I was listening, and being for the sake of being, not for the sake of doing and for any other reason, but how lovely it is to be in the world,
Yeah.
to look at the sky and to feel your breath and to feel the beauty of looking out into the world at sky and earth and tree and birds and all this. And I feel like I came out of the pandemic, right after the pandemic, like at the minute that it was coming, like waning, I went to Spain because I had been studying flamenco like in here in the US, but the origin of flamenco is in Spain, in the south of Spain. I went to Spain for a month at the very end of the pandemic. And when I came back, I was like, I have to move to Spain. I mean, like, I can't study from far away. There's something, it's really calling to me. So after like whatever 2 years of stillness, I came back and I'm like, I have to move to Spain. And I did. And
Yeah.
I was there for 2 years. So but I feel now I'm back in the US now, and I came back because my for some family issues. And I feel I need to remember what I was like during that time of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I feel I'm being called for myself to be still again before I take whatever the next true step is.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a jazz radio show, and I'll talk to people about Miles Davis. And I don't think people realize this, but one of the things that people that knew him well said was that he was one of the best listeners. He could really preen in, and he had a really good ear, and he just knew that art of knowing when to just listen to what was going on. And there was always that Miles look. There was this thing that he would do on the bandstand because he was just tuned in, and they knew it without it being too overt. But it's interesting. And I think the planet responded too. I mean, the Venice canals cleared up, the smog in Beijing cleared up. There were all of these little epicenters of nature. I remember at one point, I'm an IT technician for a school district, and I was driving on a road that's relatively rural, and I saw a dog chasing a squirrel. Or not a squirrel, a deer, and I thought it was one of the most bizarre things because I never saw anything like that. but everything slowed down to a point where things in nature were responding in different ways.
That's right. Oh, that's so heartening to hear you say. I feel that too. And it's like there was this glimpse of what it could be like when we go slow,
Yeah.
when we allow nature, like we go out into nature, and like nature is not out there, it's in here. It's in
Mm.
here,
Yeah.
I feel, and so I guess for myself, I'm remembering how much it matters to me to like be like nature and live like nature. And I'm trying to, without trying too hard, because when you try, I feel like it's a, I'm just trying to find that flow again,
Yeah. 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 It can be hard. It's like trying to find that feeling when you travel and come back. You want to hold on to it, but one way or another, life just tends to roar pretty loud. So it's you got to, it's perspective. But so there's a lot going on with you as a performance artist, a writer. You facilitate workshops. But if I was to put you in front of a bunch of kids at career day, and one of the kids wanted to know what you did for a living, how would you simplify that? How would you explain what you do on a daily basis in 2024?
I would say to them that when people ask me what I do, I will tell you what I am doing now.
Yeah,
Because I would say I follow what calls. It's really important for me to find ways and to feel free to follow what calls, because I believe it's really important to follow those mysterious impulses to create, especially things that you can't figure out what it is. You don't have a name for it, but it's calling you.
hmm,
And so, what I feel, I use this phrase a lot for myself. I follow what calls. And for me, it's taken me into places that today, that in our world we call art. But I believe that everyone is creates art. Everyone, I believe it's creativity is our natural human heritage. It helped us survive and thrive. And so I say, I love, um, I would say I love to write, and I love to be moved by the world. And because I'm so moved by the world, I move and I dance. I find ways to express what's inside, for it to come out and share it with you and support you in your response, because I love the interaction.
yeah.
So I would say things like that.
So when you were in that age group, 10, 11 years old, third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream?
At that age, I think I was dreaming really. I don't know if I had one. I remember at that age, I was dreaming of faraway places. At that age, I was just moving from India to the US, but I was in a boarding school, I remember, in a Catholic convent boarding school in the mountains of India. And we had geography class, one whole class. And I remember reading about things like Argentina, like the vast spaces of Argentina, maybe even Mongolia at that time. So I think I was dreaming really, because when I got older in my 30s, that's what the places I went to. So I was dreaming of big open spaces.
So talk to me a little bit about the seeds that were planted into you that made you want to be an artist, made you want to write, that made you want to be a creative. How did all of those get kind of harvested and evolve into who you are today?
The interesting thing was that I always read, like I would read voraciously as a kid. I grew up in Bombay, which is a very busy, and in a family that are merchants sort of for a living. And so my whole family, my around me were people selling things and buying things, and I was around that. But also there's poetry. My mother loves poetry in a language called Urdu, and I grew up with really old, like the poetry of old Hindi. Now it's Bollywood this and that, but I grew up with the sense of the poetry of old Hindi films, in this language called Urdu. And I read so much, but I always was someone who was moved by the world, not someone who created. That's how I always thought of myself. Even through college, like I majored in English, literature, and French. But the creative people, the people who wrote, were those creative writing people. It wasn't me. And I think for whatever reason, I had this sense of I'm really moved by the world. I'm really moved by writing. I have all this feeling, but oh, I'm not an artist. And I worked in documentaries right after college, which for me was not art making for me only because it was not my art, for someone else who was natural to them. And then what happened was for some reason, I took a fiction writing workshop, like to write a short story. And that's when all the doors started opening in me. I and that the writing, it just, I mean, and I began winning little awards and residencies, so what happened was the things were important was I took a small step and began creating. And then I got some validation, you know, and that helped me go further. And then it got to a point where in, in addition to writing, like big nature was calling to me. I didn't really know what to do with it, but it coalesced in a very interesting way when I was 31 or something, 32 like this. I got like a big grant from the New York Foundation for the Arts for the promise shown in one short story. It was like a couple of $1,000s. It was a fellowship. And I said, look, Shebana, if you stay in New York, this will be gone like this. And I had always wanted to go from that long ago geography class in India to Tierra del Fuego in Argentina. It had been in my mind. So I said, okay, then I'm giving away everything, closing, stopping renting my apartment in New York, stopping working in documentaries, and I'm going to Tierra del Fuego. And I'm going to write while I'm there, not about it, but I'm saying I'm going to work on the short story collection there. And I think that was a real big change in my life,
Yeah.
deciding to follow something really mysterious. And it felt in that moment, many seeds kind of came up into a tree.
Yeah.
And I think that began a real different phase in my life where I really was able to follow what called.
Yeah. I mean, I think being creative means that you just, because everybody has the question. Do have I been on this planet long enough? Do I have a good story? All of those things come in. But I think it's really about just grabbing onto it and say, yeah, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah. I it's become to such a point now where it's so hard for me to do what it doesn't is not in full integrity with my spirit. And it's hard in the world because it feels like the bottom line is money in some way, like you need that thing to survive. And
Yeah.
even to be an artist, a money making artist, it requires wearing different hats. That's not just about creating. And you said, I remember in your, because I listened to your promo, it said something about opening up our story portals, about helping us understand each other a little bit better by
Yeah.
sharing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what creativity to me is a kind of sharing of the essence. It gets really hard to stop this path because once you start creating, you're sharing your essence. And if people are responding to you, they're sharing their essence right away.
Hmm.
So you're getting to the heart of each other right away. And it's really hard to not you just get used to interacting with people that way
Yeah.
and things that way and moments that way. And so yeah, it's mysterious. I'm saying I understand how I'm creative, but also there is an element of mystery
Yeah.
that I really like to honor, because as much as I love words, is what you were saying about the listening, I really trust silence.
Yeah. What was the first thing that you created where you got a response and you thought, wow, this is what I need to be doing?
The first thing,
Yeah, that really, really like evoked like this notion that you arrived or this is what you need to do, kind of based a little bit off of how they responded.
yeah, I mean, it was more recently, honestly, I will say. The it was not so long ago. I mean, I wrote stories and people liked them. So there was that, like when I first wrote stories and people. But the thing that comes to me the most, the truest thing I've done is very mysterious. I wrote a poem about fear. I said every time fear arrives, I invite it in to have tea, you know.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a whole song and dance, like because I'm frozen and I can't leave because in fears they're sitting across from me and having tea and we're sipping. And even when the dancers come, I'm like, no, 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 I can't leave. I'm here with fear, sipping tea. Well, that poem led me to the stage because I realized it needed to be performed, and I went to India to study performance energy. It expanded into a play that's called The Good Manners of Colonized Subjects. To do that play, I had never performed a play before. I danced flamenco. I took time off. I just invested in myself. I took like 5 months there, at the end of which I rented a place to in Santa Fe to show the play. Okay, it was like in August of 2018. And it was like a 70-minute play, and it's poetry, dance, a little bit of song, just me on a stage. And when I did that, because it's about excavating, like, what does it mean to be colonized a long time ago by the British and the Portuguese? How does that still show up in the body? Because I come from a class of Indians who were specifically created to be Indian in blood and color, but English in taste and morals and intellect. It was a way for an empire to manage the chaos of India, create a group of people. I knew that, but something about doing the play was like I never knew why I was how I was, why I had these beliefs about, like, because I speak English, I'm better than other Indians who don't speak English as well as I do, you know?
Yeah.
And then also fear, the art and fears in it. Why was I not doing what I really loved more, you know? How after that play, when the group of 80 people who were there like stood up, but it was not the standing up. It maybe it was that. It was my having done something that I'd never done before that felt so true. You know, this is what I was here for. Like, I loved being on stage, and I'd been I was like, I had no idea how much I loved what it feels like to be on stage and sing and dance and share and move, and then to have people respond to it, you know,
Yeah.
and the liveness.
Yeah.
That was the thing. It was quite recent, I would say. I feel like really young in that way.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's the beauty of art, is that it is kind of a regenerative thing that will hit you. And people always think there's like heydays, or it happens early in life, but it can just be yesterday, or it could be last week. There's always these little moments that get you going. So who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you in your life of being creative?
Hmm. Of these, I would say not forgotten, but I love these people I've discovered through poetry or song or dance. So, like, I discovered some years ago the words of, she's a Polish Roma poet, and her name is Papuja. And what I loved about, I found a documentary about her. She grew up in a group, in a community that wandered. This is my favorite story about what art means. And every night, as they were wont to do, they would stop and make a fire and eat and then sing and dance. And there was, along with this community of Roma, of gypsies, there was an like anthropologist. He was traveling with them, you know. So one day he sees this girl, her name is Papuja, sing and dance, and speak. And he goes up to her afterwards and he says, what is it, the things that you are saying, you know, because I hear you're saying things. And she says, oh, these are things that just come out of my head, you know. And he says to her, well, do you know that the things that you are saying are poetry? And she says, "But what is poetry?" Because she was just doing what came naturally,
Hmm.
you know? And for me, that kind of papuja, the poetry that she wrote that came out of her head, I've come to realize in the workshops, all the things that I do, is I love that tapping into the words, the expressions that come really naturally because you're moved by things. And so I think it's like people I've discovered who are no longer here, but whose words are here
Yeah.
to give me a little bit of an insight of how they had lived with a sense of real, just doing stuff for the love of it because it was part of who they were, their nature.
I was interviewing a lawyer from West Virginia the other day, and he's a poet now. And he was like, everything I did in a courtroom, everything I did legal wise is just it's already gone up into the ether and it's gone. It's not going to be something that's going to be an epitaph for my existence, but the poetry will, the words
Wow.
will. And that was and it's true. I think that there's that lasting, I mean, all of us, there's a level of us that want to leave behind something that's lasting. And I still, that whole quote resonates in my head. So I'm curious, the one thing I remember, one of the first shows that I ever had, I had a first Friday in Kansas City. We have a place called the Crossroads, and it's the big art district. And if you can get into a first Friday, it's a big deal. And I remember I got into it shortly after my son was born. It was in '05. And I remember a gal that owned the gallery said, it's not about getting the show, it's about what you do after it. And my next question, the lead into that is that art is one of those things that has to keep you fueled all the time. So what is it every day that gets you up, that makes you either pounce on an idea you have or explore new ones? I mean, you obviously have moved around, you're curious. What has that been for you consistently, year after year, that makes you be a creative?
It's it goes back to mystery. There'll be something that kind of um draws me, so for example, like there may be a phrase and suddenly I'm in a, because I work in different genres, so I don't know, for example, I have to feel out, is this a short story, is this a poem, is this a memoir piece? I don't have to figure it out, but I'm like smelling it, I'm sensing it, I'm like following the scent of it. Sometimes now more and more it mixes because I feel like once you've followed all these forms, you just it kind of takes new shape. So I would just say like it's different every time. And it's the difference, the mystery of it that keeps me going because I don't know. What I'm committed to is creating, is honoring the stuff that wants to emerge because I feel it, what it has to say is not me, I guess. I don't take it personally. I do feel stuff is emerging through me.
Yeah.
When stuff resonates, so when like people stand up and say this is good, yes, I feel good as a person who I am, but what really heartens me is that I've cleared the way for something universal to come through me,
Yeah.
because that's why you're responding the way that you are, who is responding to me, it's connecting into the heart of you.
Hmm.
So I really try, I try not to try, but I'm like just feeling it around, and it's that sense of, but I gotta, it's such a part of my nature. Things are taking shape and now in movement and story and song. Now I'm working on my voice a little bit more, not to sing, but something about just the singing is a kind of surrender, I
Yeah.
feel. So I don't know if that answered it, but
It
it's
did. It totally did. So you've been award winning with what you've done in your life, but at the end of the day, what are you the proudest of?
hmm, I think I'm proud that I keep my heart open. Or I think I'm proud that I still uh that there's a kind of courage to be open to whatever comes, whatever's calling to me.
Yeah.
And it's not from me.
Yeah.
It's from connecting to something larger. So I'm proud of having still in some way being here, which has nothing to do with me, but I'm just I'm
Right.
still having maybe being hopeful. I don't know, Joe. I don't know what I'm in this time of limbo, so I don't know, to be honest. But
Well,
yeah.
well, let's expand that just a little bit more and be a little bit more specific. At the end of the day, everyone has this idea of who they think you are. Your family does, your friends do, everyone that consumes your art, but you ultimately are in control. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I feel like I'm someone who just is dying to dance under a tree for a long, 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 long time without, barefoot under a tree next to a sea.
There you go. Well said. That's a painting right there.
Yeah.
So, if anyone wants to indulge in all of your wonderful work, where do they go? If they want to reach out, any of the good business, where do they go?
They come to I have a website called shebanacoelho.com. So my name, my name is Shebana yeah, Shebana, which means Shub means night. So Shebana. And
Okay.
then Coelho, Coelho, that comes from the Portuguese. It's a Portuguese last name. It means rabbit in Portuguese. And the Vasco da Gama, who came and led the colonizing front of the Portuguese and
Yeah.
colonized India, gave that to my father's family many, many, many. I gave it, I mean, imposed it, put it
Yeah.
on my father's family. So anyway, everything is there. And if you Google me, you'll find me,
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's always my answer. How can I see anything? Just Google it. Just go out to Google and you'll find it. But
Yeah.
yeah, when you have your name as the real estate, that always helps, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Hey, this has been wonderful. I'm always so glad to run into artists that are really truly making. I think that's the thing about these modern times that we're living through is that we've seen time after time that art tends to be the healer. It tends to be the thing that connects us to this planet and makes us think that we're not just hurtling through some weird political drama, that we actually have substance and sustenance and that we can connect as humans. Because I think we're all a lot more alike. I think we're all going for a lot of the same things in a very universal way, no matter where we live on the planet. So it's always refreshing. So thank you for your story. Thank you for your creativity and keep doing the wonderful work.
Thank you. And thank you for what you do. You really are connecting people. And I do feel the revolution begins one by one altogether.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. Great to
Okay.
meet you. Good luck on all your journeys.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.